Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-affleck.
And it's time for...
And I got a deal for you! UnSpun.
What's your deal?
Well, it's referring to a little Sahota real estate deal that happened this week within the city of Vancouver. I think it's our first topic of the day, I believe.
Well, we could let's go vaccines first, because there's a little bit of that going on. That's really, I mean, hour to hour. We're looking. I can't wait. I know I'm like number 9 on the 10 list of risk assessment, but as you know, my dad in care, frontline healthcare workers, my mom and my stepdad, both underlying health issues and in their 80s. Like, there are a lot of people here. I'm like, yes, let's do this. And all the negative news around vaccines, it kind of, I don't know. I'm like, okay, shh. But then this morning, as recording time, Thursday morning, there was the news release from CSIS that the Canadian supply chain for the vaccine has been put on notice that other countries might be trying to influence those who are involved in this chain. It kind of made me nervous.
What does that mean? What does that mean? How?
Well, it was a CBC column that I read, and basically, and they didn't name the countries, but they said that they might influence or imprison family members of those who are working internally on the supply chain of vaccinations to influence them in order to access, I don't know, the vaccine. Or I know it feels like a spy movie. Oh.
It does. Can't we just get our shots and move on? Like, come on, let's get this done. We're all in the same boat, every country in the world. Let's just do this. Like, I wonder too, like, this rollout is, I'll get my shot before you, maybe. I'm not sure, but where I am in the priority. But, and we all want our shot. But I was wondering about Biden. I mean, here's a guy in his late 70s. He's the president-elect.
For sure.
Do you think he's got a shot? The guy that gave it to him a couple of days ago? I mean,
100%.
And then they'll do a fake version of him doing it publicly, because they don't want him to be at risk. They don't want him to die of COVID before he gets inaugurated. So I just think there must be like a little secret meeting and event.
I think you're right. I do think you're right. Did you see all the happenings with that John Shannon, formerly of Hockey Night in Canada, now was with Sportsnet for ages? I believe he's doing a podcast with Bob McCowan. He put out a tweet about the NHL. Looking to access vaccine because, of course, the upcoming season.
Cool.
No, guys. I was like, this is wrong on every level. And now that tweet of mine is embedded in all of the articles. The NHL has since followed up and saying, when private purchase is possible, which means never, next year.
Exactly.
Like maybe 2022.
And to Trump's credit, he actually put the ixnay on the old staff get the shot first. He said, no. But the guy's had COVID, so he doesn't worry. But
he doesn't care.
He's like, you guys can just...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Because he's going to all of a sudden start worrying about people around him. Okay, let's bring it back home. Let's talk about the Sahota. Speaking of people that clearly
the real estate deal of the week.
Care about people.
The real estate deal of the week or not deal? I don't know. It's a bit confusing to a lot of people, this Sahota deal. So Sahota's... they own these 2 hotels in Vancouver. Basically, these are SROs. These are single room occupancy. This means they are for the most, needy, like generally homeless people or people who can spend $300
marginalized.
$350 a month rooms. Yeah. Most marginalized. And they're dumps, these places. And so when I was on council, we closed one of them. The other one got closed about a year after that. We put them on notice saying, we're going to expropriate you. This is not cool. And this has been going on for years. For those who have not been following this, but I'm sure most people are kind of aware of this deal or these 2 buildings and how badly they were managed. And there was some back and forth, and they did some renovations, and the city was constantly going there and doing inspections. And, part of the rules that we have for the city now is that you're in any new SRO, or they have to require bathrooms, and there's new rules about, for every unit has to have a bathroom and all these different regulations. But everything was it was just like the reports we would get when I was on council were I can't even tell you how horrible.
Well, we saw the expose, like that was the big moment when somebody actually went in and took the pictures of like needles looking like a bird's nest in a sink and rat infested and black mold. And no water, never mind no hot water. I mean, it was just.
Yeah, and they would argue quite often that they try to fix it up, but it gets ruined as fast as they fix it because of the culture of what's going on, and you don't know who to believe. But generally, we were not. When I was there was just an obvious displeasure. We tried many different ways. We pushed through with this expropriation, put the value of the place at basically $1. And was hoping that they would okay, let's just sell it. But they wouldn't sell, and they decided to go legal on us at the city, which I always argued, and I argued this publicly. Expropriation has very strict rules. Like, to expropriate somebody, it's generally for a massive infrastructure, just you're building a highway or whatever.
Right.
In the case of Vancouver, our other expropriation deals were when we built that bridge over in East Van over the top of the train tracks, and we had to move out a few buildings and tear them down. But what we did was we offered them fair market value. What is the market value? Market value, not the assessed value. And we gave them that money to. Yeah. And then when the thing was finished, we sold a couple of those buildings because we didn't actually end up needing to tear them down. And the city made a bit of profit. In this case, we were not offering them market value. And so they were like, whoa, hey, come on. You're expropriating me, but you're not offering me. So there's all this back and forth, and a lot of stuff behind the scenes that is required in real estate deals, and you can't divulge this information until the deal is done. So this week, the deal was done. They made some kind of deal with the Zahotas, and it's not being made public ever. I mean,
well, that's what we were talking about last week on this space, because it had just happened, and it was like, wait, what? Like, yeah. But that's our money. Like, it's taxpayer dollars that were spent. That's like, we have a right to know this. And then it's that, my favorite words, in camera, which means not on camera. I don't know why in camera is the thing, but then you're not allowed to talk about it. And then we didn't know which side was it that was asking for the secrecy, because that's a little nugget. And now we know.
Well, now we know it's them asking for it, and they were paid, and so they were paid 70% over assessed value. So nobody knows what that means, to be honest. I mean, we don't, because the market value could be depending on what the opportunity is on a site, is generally what you pay for these buildings. So you think about the location of these buildings, they're in the downtown east side, but they are fairly close to a lot of Concord Pacific land, which is assessed at hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we still don't know the actual price tag that was paid by the city. There is an assumption that 70% over assessed value was too much. And to me, this again, I go back to this we talked about last week, is like, this is just with the 43 communication staff at City Hall, you'd think there'd be a plan for this. I mean, you'd think there'd be a way to discuss this, or there would be like, why are we letting these guys get away with this? And I think, and I argue that I believe that most residents in this city would say, okay, just give them their money and get the hell out of here. Like, go away. Zahotas, we don't want you here anymore. It's just not cool. And people would be fine with that. But now this secrecy has created all this, well, 70%, or what does that equal? And it might be a good deal. We don't know. We don't know.
But it's keeping it in the headlines. Value. Exactly. I mean, if it was when was it assessed? Yeah.
It's like $1.70. What are you paying for it?
It's keeping it in the headlines. And frankly, one of the things that I'd be curious about is how much has the litigation cost? Because that has to go on top of it.
And that was always my concern when I was in office. I said, how much are we going to spend? Fighting. Millions, $3, $5, $6 million on lawyer fees? I mean, to what? That just let's just get on with this and get these guys out of here. Put new zoning in the site, and let's make it work. Like, it just,
let's make it work.
Fiasco after another.
What should happen to the buildings now? Like, that should be the next conversation: is, are we in there? When do we get in there? What happens when we get in there? Because if it's going to take 3 years to fix inside those buildings and keep the heritage of them, we don't have time for that. For the need.
No, it's going to be years. It's going to be 10 years before you see. There has to be there is in the article that Jen St. Dennis did last week. She talked about that there was going to be a new neighborhood plan, I think she said, or community plan, which downtown east side, we did one when I was there. It is not working. It's created this zoning nightmare that no private sector people want to go in there really do much. So to do a community plan takes 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years. to do a new neighborhood plan. So now then there's the whole process after that. And so you're looking at the construction, deconstruction. So the question now is, just tear these things down, or what are you going to do? I mean, one is kind of a heritage, but heritage in Vancouver is not that protected. And it's frankly, at some point you have to go, okay, let's move on.
Yeah. and frankly,
is not worth keeping.
Frankly, were some of the stories of the abuses that went on in those buildings. I mean, there is reason there to start fresh and then create a space and a place that is something that is supportive of those most marginalized people in that community in a way that significantly impacts and makes change. I mean, that would be the positive communication around these awful SROs, is to actually have some meaningful and urgent revamping of the plan there. So it doesn't have to wait for, 2, 3, 4 election cycles, municipal cycles. Like, come on. Anyway.
And the way you can manage those things within Vancouver, we have a lot of freedom in working with developers on what they are required to give us. And sometimes it's cash, these things called CACs, community amenity contributions. And there's a lot of flexibility that we have in the city of Vancouver. What is the definition of a CAC and what can you get from a developer? Right. And so if you were to reassess or rezone that site and you were to say, okay, now it's worth whatever, the potential value is $100 million, maybe you get $50 million. I don't know. You could argue, and we've had even in my time, proposals from developers, and you look at them and you go, wow, that's pretty. Like, they would build, the best example actually is the Wall Center, the Peter Wall building at the corner of Drake and Richards. So it's a tower. They got an extra 20 floors, I think it was, or at least 10 or 20 floors additional in height. And over what was zoned for that neighborhood, went through a planning process, went through the public hearing. Nobody complained because it's Yaletown. And that's 30 stories, 50 stories, what's the difference?
Right.
And with that extra money that they made off that building, basically the 20 stories of hugely valuable real estate in the downtown core, they took that money and built a new building at the corner of Seymour and Helmkin for core need people, and with community space built into it. And in fact, that's where the new injection site's going downtown in that building. So
that's exactly what should be happening.
So it didn't cost the city and they were required to build that one first. And they actually ended up building them both simultaneously because they just used the same construction crews. And so there were a lot of efficiencies. And so they built I think it's a 12-story building at the corner of Helmkin and Seymour. And they built a 46-story building for themselves so that they could, it's actually a rental building, but it is a strata building that they can sell and make a lot of money off of it. So, I mean, there are deals we can negotiate in the city that can be like that, where you get the thing built for the people who need it most, fastest, by the developers. They'll do it if it makes sense for them. And we don't negotiate those things enough in the city. And I think we should. And it's about looking at real estate that can be leveraged in order to achieve a goal on the other side of town, or even why does it have to be Vancouver? I mean, why not? We talked to Burnaby. Hey, got any sites, real estate sites sitting empty that we can put a 15-story, social housing unit? Let's talk. Let's talk to the region.
Let's talk and make our metro better by serving all of the people.
Like the ones at Strathcona? Like the ones at Strathcona Park?
Perfect segue. Seriously. Oh, did you hear? Did you hear about the press conference?
Oh, no, tell me what happened. Must be amazing announcements.
You know what happened?
Real, what happened?
Nothing.
Nothing. I know. They held a press conference. Oh, wow, it's going to be a big thing. They're going to be, getting in court injunction. They're going to be, if they found housing, they're going to get these people out of here. They're going to help them. They're going to do something. They're going to, whatever it is they're going to do. No, the mayor didn't show up. No representation from the province. No representation from the federal government. Nothing. It was like, what is this? This is just an update of nothingness. It was weird. And Mike Howell from Vancouver's Awesome did a really good piece on this, saying, don't get overexcited here, everybody. This is no news. What was interesting, he referred to this in his article, and I think it's really interesting, is he referred to the minister, Mike Farnworth, saying back when they kicked out people from Oppenheimer, or found housing and kicked people out. It was a mixture, because there's not a lot of people. There are many people in these parks, these tent cities, who don't need housing. They're living there for whatever other reason. They have housing. They're just not living in it. He said then that we are in a double situation where we have the pandemic and we have housing. We can't let those two things. We have to make sure this is a priority and find housing for these people, because they can't be living in these situations because it's dangerous. Nothing's changed since that was April. Nothing has changed since April to now. We're still living with the pandemic. There is tents all over, more tents in Strathcona than there were in Oppenheimer. Yet the province is silent on dealing with this the same way they were noisy back in April. And to me, this just speaks to potentially, like, is this because they were planning their election in September and they wanted to look good? They wanted the summer to be, didn't want Oppenheimer to be a key thing for the summer. I don't know. It's just like, but there needs to be a solution. And of course, the solution, as I always talk about, it has to come from all levels of government. The federal government needs a more robust national housing program that deals with this, so the issue of housing all people, frankly. Then the province needs to step up on the healthcare, mental health care, and working with the nonprofits and funding those nonprofits to manage this housing that might come through funding from the federal government. And then the cities need to be quicker and faster and more nimble in providing the property and the zoning to build this shit. Like, come on, guys.
Build it. Oh my God. It feels like we keep having the same conversation without anybody breaking ground. And now in this announcement, the big part of this announcement was really riling up people who are like, how is this going to fix anything? As you said, housing, they have to find housing or appear to find housing for everybody at Strathcona to decamp the park, and that the hostel at Jericho Beach, which, by the way, even for visiting people, and this is not NIMBYism because people need homes, I get that, and I don't live next door to the hostel, but if somebody were coming to visit, and I live on the west side, so somewhat near that hostel, I would not suggest that they stay there because it's close to nothing.
Nothing.
Like nothing. You can't buy a bottle of water. You can't get a sandwich. You can't, there's no takeaway. And people are like,
it's dark down there.
It's dark down there. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go without, maybe if there's some bit of trouble, getting help. You're not just going to the neighbor and knocking on the door. I mean, at least at the 2400 Motel on Kingsway, you're in a community where there are convenience stores and restaurants and takeout, fast food, whatever, grocery stores, whatever. The Jericho hostel is in the middle of nowhere. It's a great place to stay in the summertime if you're going to walk around, but even then.
I know, but it's also a world-renowned youth hostel that gives us a lot of PR for Vancouver, and now we're going to shut it down for future use. That's like a double whammy.
But that goes to the next sort of incarnation of it. So that's an entitlement piece of the puzzle in my mind. Like, I'm willing to put people wherever. I mean, if my next door neighbor's house was empty and somebody needed a place to live and they needed to go in there, do it. But have the supports if that person has mental health issues or needs the supports.
As you know.
Right, exactly. So I understand that, and sort of this press release, and poor Katie Lewis who's like the community spokesperson for Strathcona, who's just been like banging the drum for months over there. And when this press conference took place, she's like, diligence pays off. Yay. Like, she could see light at the end of the tunnel. And then like, and I was even asking sources, I was checking in with people. I'm like, so what's the timeline on this? Because isn't this a bit of a like, hey, you guys, come to Strathcona, everybody here, you get a house and you get a house and you get a room and you get a room. Like, why would you have that press? Like, who held that? Was that a park board leak? Was it a city? Because the mayor wasn't there, so it couldn't have been a city planned thing.
Well, but they weren't even clear because there was rumors that the park board had discussed in camera about getting an injunction. And I'm confused by this. Because so maybe it was a park board initiative. It's not clear, and it's not clear what the park board what's changed at the park board. They have a new general manager.
That's what I want to hear about. Who is Donnie Rosa? Yes,
well, she. I forget her pronoun if it's they or she actually, but was at the park board before at a different level, and then she left and went to work in Port Coquitlam there briefly, and then came back when that position became available when Malcolm I always get Bromley, Malcolm, the other Malcolm, the one that's not the mayor of Richmond. Anyways, the previous GM. Sorry, Malcolm. How soon we forget. So he left, and so she's took take over. So and then she's very qualified, competent, successful at her over the time, and the things that she has done. There was a lot of,
and she's got the experience of working with the park board, so
yes,
she knows the ins and outs. So what kind of power does a general manager have when she took this gig knowing what's going on there, right?
Well, I think when you take a new job, you've taken a new job every once in a while in your life, and you go in there and you're all like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this thing differently. And then you get in there and you're like, what? Nobody wants to, what? We got to do it this way? Oh, you can't do that? What? Oh, you don't like my ideas? Oh, you can't, or you're what? You kind of, okay, I got to work within this system. And I think she was perhaps maybe somewhat idealistic about, mainly it's what is the challenge is the board itself, which we know with the Green Cope Alliance are unwilling to do anything related to of any policing nature. They're using now the regulation that they put in place related to you're allowing tent people to sleep in parks now until 8 a.m. And there is a rule which they changed the bylaws, say you're allowed to sleep in parks now because there was some court case about this and whatever. And we had a discussion about this several months ago. But there's a loophole in that you have to leave by 8, but if you have various reasons, you can stay after 8 a.m. But it's not everybody would have this be able to follow this loophole. And actually, if you were to go into Strathcona right now or at 8 a.m., I bet you 50% of those tents are empty. And I would say that, in fact, there's proof with CBC did an aerial heat camera over top of Oppenheimer at the height of the issue, and half the tents, more than half, were empty. They saw more rats than they saw people. So I would say that it's no different in Strathcona. So the question is, you go in there if you are willing as a park board to go in there at 8 a.m., go up to the tents. If they're empty, then you just dismantle them because they're obviously not there. And this is the rule. That is the rule. So they're not willing to do that, this park board. If they were to give direction to the GM to say, this is what we need to do, she would do it. She would work with the police and they would do this. This is how we used to do it. You tents up, you go, you move it. You don't let it sit there. In fact, the City of Vancouver's major facilities is right next door there to that park, to Strathcona. So they are literally next door to each other, as well as the fire department's headquarters are there too. So there are all lots of facilities and abilities in that neighborhood.
Invested, We have a park board commission and a city council who are unwilling to take any kind of what is perceived as a hard line regarding people putting up tents in parks. And as a result, we have people dying in our parks. Our fault as a city, in my mind, park board's fault. It's their fault these people are dying and being hurt and threatened in their community, in no access to
the buck stops
the services. The buck stops at the elected. Holy. Let's talk about other elected officials and go provincial here. Premier John Horgan, his government announcing the expected deficit, the COVID impact deficit in British Columbia, 13.6 billion?
Sure, that's half what it's probably going to be. But, we have $13 billion deficit projected. We haven't got a budget yet this year. So one day we'll get a budget for this year.
These are just snapshots. Sorry, I said budget.
Yeah.
But it's a snapshot, right? It's a snapshot. And frankly, with what we're seeing on a global scale, it's really hard to predict, especially in this darkest sort of wedge corner of COVID that we find ourselves in. Like, who knows what recovery looks like? Yeah. Yeah.
But what have I got from the province for my $13 billion? I mean, literally, we know what the federal government have been blowing their money on. We all know what that 300 and whatever billion dollar deficit. So, but in the province, I'm looking at going, okay, they still haven't written those checks. That doesn't include all those. Maybe it does include those checks. I haven't checked, but the checks that they're sending, the $1,000,
but
based on
those
2009.
Checks, 2019. So when everybody was gainfully employed, like my significant other has not worked since March 17th. It's December 16th, 17th. Oh, exactly today. And you know what? We're not in a situation where we need a whole lot of government services, not a whole lot. But if you looked at his this year's taxes, he would get $1,000. And we're talking about 1,000.
Merry Christmas. I don't even think it's a good policy in general. It's a dumb approach. It's
but,
just like,
but for some families, it's
buying
the difference.
votes is what that was all about. Yeah, totally. Sure. If you are making only $30,000 a year, that's a big chunk of your income. And a lot of people this year made $30,000, but in 2019 they might have made 90. And so that's the ultimate question: is that they get their $100 or $50 instead. So it's like, okay, what is the point of this?
And might still have property tax, right? Like, might still have to pay the nut that's not going away. Like, you still have to pay your insurance, you still have to pay your property tax, you still have to pay or your rent or your strat fees or whatever it is.
Well, and we've talked about this before, and I'm a small business owner, so I've been paying very close attention to what opportunities there are as a small business owner. The federal government did a lot of things for us, for sure, but the province did some kind of ridiculous thing for rental rebates. You had to go through your building owner. It was super complicated. It was kind of creepy that what you had to give to the owner of your building. I wasn't willing to give my financials to my building owner. No way. And I wouldn't even probably qualify. And it's like, oh God. And then they were being a jerk, and they said, we don't even know if we want to file the paperwork for you. And you're like, oh, great.
Weren't we the only province too that didn't get any break on our car insurance? Like,
yeah.
Where accidents were super low.
I don't know what the province did. I don't know what they've done for us. I really don't. And so it's really frustrating. And then we heard this week the hospitality industry is coming out strong saying, hello, we have the entire industry is basically shut down. If you own a restaurant or you're an event, and your column this week was about this, these are super, super challenging. And this is an important industry and an important industry for us to think about once we get out of this nightmare to be able to get out and enjoy life again. Hopefully there's something that we can enjoy after this is over.
I certainly hope so. And you know what? You're right about my column. I didn't realize how starved our fare at the PNE is compared to the exact replicas of our fare across the country. And even just accessing the wage subsidy, right? Like the Calgary Stampede totally accesses the wage subsidy.
Yeah.
In fact, tens of millions of dollars in supports for the CNE, for the Calgary Stampede, many of them getting grants and subsidies and what have you. And the PNE, because it's a municipally owned fair, again, unique to Vancouver. Like, I'm really looking forward to a time where Vancouver isn't as unique as it is. Our uniqueness is really kicking us in the tush in COVID-19. Anyways, I want people to read the column to understand it, because it's really complicated. I ended up speaking with the president and CEO of the PNE, Shelley Frost, who tells the story. Of course, you well know the history of the PNE. I think you and I maybe met when you were
many years ago.
Years and years ago.
Balance and I were business partners. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I spent many a year hanging out at the fair.
But honestly, George, and here we are counting down to Christmas, we're in the holiday season, and I went to the Winter Lights last weekend, and I wasn't ready for how emotional I got. Turning the corner at the old roller coaster, I was like, we have to save this. We have to do something. Like, why is it? And the excuse seems to be from the Prime Minister that, well, if we opened up for the PNE to access this, then we'd have to open up every municipal event. It's like, or not.
Yeah.
The PNE is, in my mind, granted, he'd have to look all the way over the Rockies to see it. But as far as employment in British Columbia, it's Bombardier.
Yeah, it's an unusual because it's kind of a crown corporation of the city. It fits. I don't know how many of those are in Canada, so his reference to that is not relevant. But it's also an argument. You look at, say, the province dealing with the convention center, which would be the similar kind of situation. Corporation that's provincially owned, they're all laid off. But the PNE is still kind of trying to operate some stuff, and the city hasn't provided any kind of anything for them.
Nothing.
Really. I mean, they're looking at a huge deficit, what they're looking at. So the city, in fact, will take them. And so that's not going to be included, as far as we know, in any of the debts that we have been seeing from this council. And so the province and the PNE Corporation was gifted to the city in about 1999 or 2000, somewhere in there. It was a provincial crown corporation before that.
2004.
There we go. 2004.
It was 2004.
I remember because that went on forever, and so that was a huge. But now it's like, oh God, I wish we hadn't taken that.
But there are some good pieces to this puzzle, because in my oh God, what's at play here behind the scenes? I was worried that maybe the city wanted to starve the PNE because that's some really high-end real estate that I'm sure somebody would want to put condos on or da-da-da. And Shelley Frost was like, no. This is a parcel of land that was gifted to the city for the explicit use of recreation and enjoyment of all citizens. So there's no parceling it off and rezoning and selling and whatnot. So that kind of put my mind at ease. I found out a number of really interesting nuggets. So,
Well, we do own a lot of property around the PNE.
Yeah.
So we could rezone a lot of the areas around this giant, what is now, it's a park, but it's not really a park. It's a corporation. It's an asset. It's not. So I'm not sure I 100% agree with her position on that.
You don't have to agree. Tell us.
No, I think that there is opportunity to do things. I think as far as facilities, and there's no reason why you can't create some seniors housing and seniors facilities on that site. But it's around the PNE. If you're going to say, okay, let's imagine this was just a green park by Stanley Park. Okay, that means that we have all this real estate all around all four corners of this site that we then could look as a city, go, and you look at up the hill there, beautiful views of everything, all underzoned area. If you go,
but not to the detriment of the park itself, and not to the fair. Like
no, you could actually build around it.
That's the part that I think is important. Like, why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we get on that right now?
The city can start a rezoning process right now, and they can make and work with developers, and they can get cash in the bank like that.
See, coming up with ideas in under 30 minutes on UnSpun. Follow George _affleck on Twitter. I'm at Jody Vance on Twitter, at the Orca. Of course, you're going to the orca.ca and signing up for Finn the newsletter. And you should be tuned in to CKNW over the next couple of weeks because, George, you're going to be officially making your debut.
I'll be on Sunday morning with Sterling Fox as a co-host for my first training of how to be a radio host, and then we'll see after that. I'm just kind of on standby.
We'll play some clips of that on Monday when I'm filling in for Jill Bennett Monday, Tuesday, and then on Wednesday I'm Linda Steele all the way to the new year. So lots of us on CKNW coming up. But you'll of course see us right here. We're going to continue doing UnSpun. We're going to have some fun. Make sure you have your Bailey's coffee, perhaps, loaded up in your mug. Maybe a gin and tonic for next
whatever it is you drink, yeah.
Pick your poison, people. Join me and George, and we'll talk some holiday cheer next week. Make it a great one. Bye.
See ya.